Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So my name is Alicia Post. I'm the AZM National Program and Communications Director. So the American Zionist Movement, in case any of you don't know, is comprised of 33 national Jewish Zionist organizations, including the AZYC, the American Zionist Youth Council, which is 9 Zionist youth movements. And AZM works across a broad ideological, political, religious spectrum, linking American Jews and the American Jewish community together in support of Israel's Zionism and the Jewish people. AZM is the U.S. Zionist Federation in the World Zionist Organization, and recently, as you all know, facilitated the U.S. election to the World Zionist Congress, where 123,000 American Jews voted for their voice in Israel. On Zoom with us here tonight, we have Jeff Becker from AZM, who's the U.S. election coordinator. We also are joined by Herbert Bloch, AZM's executive director, and Ariana Tipograph, AZM's tech guru. Tonight is in partnership with CYJP, the Council of Young Jewish Presidents, which AZM is proud to be a member of. Zach Schaffer is the executive director of the CYJP, also a delegate to the Congress, and he can tell you a little bit more about CYJP organization. Zach?
Thank you so much, Alicia. I will be very quick. It is so wonderful to see all of you and to see other young faces. The Council of Young Jewish Presidents in this digital world is quickly becoming a national agency, and our focus is to network and prepare the new generation of leaders, board members and lay leaders and philanthropists in the Jewish community. So I myself am honored to be a delegate and to be a part of the American Zionist movement and the Congress, and we're certainly honored to have the AZM as a member of CYJP. And the only thing I will say is that we're also in conversation with AZM to host a few more opportunities to bring us younger folks together. And since we'll be missing the chances that we'll have in person this year to meet in the hallway and, you know, talk while we're waiting in line for lunch, we're actually going to be hosting a few programs on an app that's going to allow us to have one-on-one sort of speed date conversations. So we'll be able to meet one another and have some more in-depth one-on-one conversations and still network. So you'll get some more information from that soon. And it is so wonderful to see the youth representation here. I'll pass it on. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. It's really exciting to do some programs with you, and we look forward to doing more. Before I go any further, I'm really excited that Noah Bloch was able to join us for a few minutes tonight. Noah is here from the Zionist Federation of Australia. So Noah, can I invite you to say hello and give some greetings?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And it's super exciting to see in the chat where all over the world, people, all over North America, people are signing in from. So I am here. I'm currently talking to you from New York City, but as Alicia mentioned, I sit on the executive of the Zionist Federation of Australia. I'm the chair of public affairs. So yeah, I work on kind of the political policy side in Australia. And so really exciting to kind of see everyone here. Unfortunate that the Congress is obviously virtual this year, but Alicia asked me just to briefly kind of give you all just, you know, from a perspective of someone outside of the US. I think it's really exciting to see, I think by being here in America, seeing the similarities between our federations and the way, you know, the love of Israel, the strength of Israel, and how that's similar in the US and Australia. And there's, you know, a lot of similarities. But at the same time, I think there are some key differences. You know, we have, but it's through those differences that we can obviously learn from each other. And so it's been a really interesting experience for me to be here in the US and to see how the federations here work, and taking those learnings back home. So I don't want to spend more time, but if anyone has any questions, obviously feel free to write on the chat, and hopefully we can continue to collaborate.
Thank you so much. We're so excited you were able to join us tonight. Mazel tov. I know you were recently married, so we're so happy for you and look forward to continuing to work with you and seeing you next year in Israel. Before I turn the program over to Andrew Keene, I'm going to ask Jeff if he wants to share a quote from Herzl when I recently interviewed him on a webinar the other day.
All right, thanks, Alicia. So actually, you were interviewing David Brakeson from the Jewish Agency, who was dressed up as Herzl at the time, but you know, it's a good quote he gave regardless, so I'll share it right now. The message of Zionism that the Congress has to focus on conveying is to spend your time figuring out how to get it across to the next generation. It's not going to happen unless you're prepared to meet them on their turf. And the first step is trying to understand why so many of them are currently altogether disinterested in Israel, if not outright antagonistic. Don't lecture them, engage them. Listen to what they have to say about alternative narratives.
Inspiring. Thank you, Jeff. Awesome. Speaking of inspiring, we have a video greeting from another Zionist hero, Natan Sharansky, specially made for you.
Dear friends, you chose to be a living bridge between the American Jewish community and Israel. Mazal tov. It's quite a task. In these difficult days, in these challenging days of epidemic, of growing anti-Semitism, of growing polarization, it's especially important to remind to all of us that Israel is not only the best guarantee of the physical survival of Jewish people, it's also the guarantee of continuity of Jewish people, of strengthening our identity, of making our communities and every Jew in the world strong and proud Jew. I wish you success in all your work in the World Zionist Organization.
Awesome. That was from his sukkah, specially made to just give you greetings and let you know how important what you're doing is. Often the best part of the Congress is really getting to know the other young participants. Although we can't meet in person this year, we're hoping to capture just a little bit of the excitement of the pre-Congress here at this get-together tonight. There are other young delegates and alternates from 35 national Zionist federations and from international organizations who will also be attending the Congress virtually and hopefully in person next year. Along with Noah, we also have another young Zionist leader, Rowan Polovin, who's the national chairman from the South African Zionist Federation, who sent along a greeting as well for you tonight.
Shalom, friends. It is an honor for me to bring warm Zionist greetings to you all the way from South Africa. It is remarkable to see such a large group of proud young American Zionists who are proudly standing up for Israel's right to exist and Israel's noble demand to be treated fairly and equally amongst the nations of the world. I look forward to, please God, seeing you in person next year in Jerusalem. In the meantime, may you have a great evening. May you have great deliberations at the WZO conference. And please God, may we all stand together for what is right in the world. Thank you very much, and ba'atzlacha.
Okay, cool. So some of you joined us yesterday for our virtual delegate and alternate assembly, but I'm sure that we can all still use an overview of the Congress. So please join me in welcoming Andrew Keene, who is a returning Congress delegate, a member of the World Zionist Organization, the WZO Expanded Executive, and sits on the Jewish Agency for Israel, or JAFI, Board of Governors. Andrew?
All right. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks for coordinating this and bringing us all together. As was said by you and by Zach, you know, one of the unfortunate pieces of being virtual is that we don't have the opportunity to gather in the hallways and the corridors and to meet each other. And, you know, I think what is so unique about the Congress and the World Zionist Organization as a whole is that it is an opportunity for people of all ages, but especially young people, to meet others who do not share the same points of view, the same politics, the same ideologies. And it's really important that we're able to have forums and gatherings like this to meet each other and to hear from each other and to listen and to learn. So I'm really thrilled that we can try to recreate just a fraction of that in the digital space. So, you know, the Congress itself, and I love the image behind many of us. You know, if these were normal times, we would actually be probably in the next few days going to this building, which is Binyanei Ha'umah, the International Convention Center in Jerusalem, to pick up our credentials and badges, and then we would be there really from morning until night for the 3 days of the Congress. And this building was built for the purpose of the Congress. In 1960, the Congress first met in this building and has been meeting there pretty much ever since. So that said, the world of the WZO and the Congress is in many ways like, you know, politics in any country, a foreign language, and learning a foreign language requires a lot of patience, a lot of practice, and a good amount of immersion in it. So, you know, with a lot of credit to the AZM for putting together, and maybe Alicia, you can drop the link in the chat to the web page, which has some really excellent links and information about the Congress that you might just want to have at your fingertips. Seeing all of these pieces come to life in and at the Congress is really how you get to understand, you know, why does this matter and how does this all fit together. And in real time at the Congress in person, it looks very different than what I imagine it will look like next week online. But that said, the outcomes of the Congress next week actually really do matter. They have pretty important repercussions for the governance and the leadership of organizations like the Jewish Agency for Israel, which Natan Sharansky is the immediate past chairman of, who just spoke to us, Kakal, also known as the Jewish National Fund, Karen Hayesod, and the World Zionist Organization itself. So one of the meetings that you'll see on the schedule is elections, and we are in fact electing the leadership of these organizations. So while this may seem like just another 3 days of Zoom meetings, the outcomes actually will have implications for the whole Zionist movement for the next 5 years. And as we learned yesterday, if you were on the call, especially if you're a delegate, it's really important to be present and show up because as we learned yesterday, maybe this will change, maybe it won't, if you're replaced by an alternate next week, it might mean you can't actually be a delegate next year in person. So this is kind of like the rite of passage to being at the Congress in person, as was said, God willing, next year in Jerusalem. Another piece I just want to say in relation to this call is, you know, we take it for granted now that there are young people at the World Zionist Congress. That was not always the case. There was a conscious change, a resolution that was passed in previous Congresses to ensure that roughly a quarter of all delegates are under the age of 35. You can debate if 35, you know, is young, less young, whatever. 35 is the WZO's definition of young, and it works. So that is an improvement. If you're saying, hey, there should be way more than a quarter of the delegates at the Congress that are under 35, that is something that you, as part of your delegation, have the opportunity to influence. Maybe not before next week, but, you know, in thinking about the Congress in person next year or the Congress after that, you know, the future of the Congress and these organizations is really in our hands. So, you know, if you're sitting in a committee meeting, you're like, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound, you know, in line with my values or my views. You, by virtue of being a delegate to this Congress, have a way to make change, and that's important. That is really important. You may have heard yesterday that there will be 5 committees that meet, and normally these committees meet in the side rooms of Binyanei Ha'umah, sometimes at some ungodly hours. Last time, some of the committees ran so long that they brought us like airplane-style meals to quickly eat while we were still discussing. But this is how it has happened in the past, and it will be recreated somehow over Zoom next week. You will be assigned, if you're a delegate, one of those committees to attend, and each of the committees has 2 or 3 different resolutions that they will be discussing and debating. And what's actually interesting to me about the resolutions as a whole is that a lot of them pertain to youth and young people. And I really do hope you take the opportunity between now and when the committee meetings start to read them and understand, you know, if this resolution were to pass, what would be the implication for me or for people from my movement or from my youth movement, because they in fact do have implications. So just to take time to understand that and to speak up during the committees. You know, it's one thing to have young people present when they're discussing resolutions about young people, but it's another thing to have young people speak up for young people, and that is really important. And as a delegate, you have that platform. Just a note about the resolutions, because it might save you some frustration next week. Only the part that, and you may have heard this yesterday, that says like the Zionist Congress resolves that ... That's all that's being actually voted on. So if the whereas clauses are like, oh, that's not, oh, I'm not sure about that, don't worry. That's actually not what's being voted on. It's that bottom piece. And if you're like, that's not really the best word in English to say what they're trying to say, it's actually the Hebrew that's voted on. So if you're a fluent Hebrew speaker, definitely get your hands on the Hebrew resolutions and make sure that they represent what you think you're voting on, because sometimes that's not always the case. Just say that. I have a few more minutes. If there are any questions, either something you heard yesterday, you're like, what was that all about? Drop it in the chat. I'm happy to answer in the few minutes that we have any questions or comments or concerns that you have as it relates to your participation in the Congress next week. Give it a second. I'm sure there's gonna be questions flooding in.
Can I ask you a question, or you want me to write it?
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the purpose of the Congress convening next year if everything's going to be decided now online? Like, obviously it's a good social event, but what's going to be next year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So two things. One, you know, the Congress itself meets every 5 years, but in the intervening years, there's actually another group that's kind of like a mini Congress called the Vada Poel, which meets. So even if there wasn't a Congress in person next year, the Vada Poel, this mini Congress, would meet, because there's enough business of these organizations and the Zionist movement that they do need to meet more than once every 5 years. And, you know, there will be more resolutions. There were a lot of resolutions that were submitted, but just because no one wants to sit on Zoom for 10 hours, they're not going to go through all those. So they are saving a good number of those resolutions for they're calling it the extraordinary Congress next year. And also, like, you know, we all worked really hard with our slates around the world. And, you know, part of doing the work of running an election was because we want to have this gathering, the celebration of Zionism in person in Jerusalem. And, you know, coronavirus permitting, we will still do that next year in keeping with tradition and the spirit of this. And there will be real business to do. Any other questions? There's not that much, there's 25 of us. You can unmute.
And don't feel stupid. There's no stupid questions. I know that it's a little confusing and that there's a lot of, you know, like, what is a resolution? What am I doing? I'm an alternate, and what's, you know, feel free to ask any questions. And if you don't want to ask questions here and feel uncomfortable for any reason, you can email jeff@elections@azm.org, or everyone is available to you. So don't be shy. We're here to be helpful and want to make this a good experience. And, you know, you are the future leadership of, you know, the movement. So
I have a question for Alicia and Andrew. So as young people, what kind of position could, obviously I get the resolution part and putting into the wording of the resolution, stuff that benefit young people, but what kind of position, like on paper, could a young person under 35 partake in? Like, what are kind of things that we should be looking out for, things that we could actually do, stuff like that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So a short question with a kind of long answer. So I'll keep it very brief. So in parallel to all of the preparation that you might be doing right now with your slate or with your global movement, I'm sure you're having pre-meetings or you're having this, there's also people representing each of our parties in Israel who are negotiating, right? Who are looking at the proportional strength of how each of our global movements did in the election and negotiating for these positions. A lot of them are based in Israel. right? Because they're paid professional positions where you go in, you know, you're the, and there's actually a list of all these positions, by the way, on the Congress website. I'll drop it in the chat when I'm done speaking. So they're looking like which movement is going to get to appoint the chairman of the diaspora department of the WZO or the vice chair of the Jewish agency. And so each movement's kind of putting together their list of who they would want in those roles. There's no age requirements for those. So there might be a movement that say, hey, if we get that role, that's going to be filled by a young person. As I said, a lot of those roles are in Israel because they're professional full-time jobs. There are a lot of roles that are not, that are volunteer and can be filled by people in the diaspora. And one of those is being a delegate to, as I said, the Vada Poel, which is like this mini Congress. And that's something that you can bring up to whoever's coordinating your slate, that, hey, you know, I had such a good time at the Congress, I'd actually like to go back in the intervening years to represent our organization on the Vada Poel. There are other positions that can be filled by people from abroad, irrespective of age. And I will drop that list in the chat because I don't think it's a good, I'm not going to read the laundry list, but a lot of that work is actually already taking place right now behind the scenes, whether you realize it or not. And I am right at time. So I'm going to thank you for your questions, opportunity, and I will pass it back to Alicia.
If you think of anything else, you know, number one, there is the chat. Number two, like I said, you could email elections.
There is one more question in the chat asking how much gets done in the committee meeting versus what's already been discussed.
The committee meetings can be very important, actually, in putting the final touches on resolutions and negotiating some of those clauses. And some of those resolutions have significant funding implications. So before they're voted on by the whole Congress, they need to be worked out in committee. So if you're attending a committee, don't just like put it on in the background and like go do other stuff. Like, you know, if something seems wrong or someone's trying to put something in last minute, like this is a political process. And now by virtue of being a delegate, you're part of that political process. So the committees are important.
Okay, and allegedly there will be some WhatsApp groups and other things if you do have questions or problems. And again, you know, we are always available, so feel free to be in touch with us. Again, we don't administer in any way or run the Congress. We run the portion of the U.S. Delegates and alternates, and we help facilitate, and we're here to be helpful. You know, AZM does not take any political stances or views. We're here to work with all of you, each and every one of you. And part of the beauty of the Congress, which I hopefully you'll hear a little bit about, and I could always talk more about later, but Yehuda Friedman, who is a previous delegate, I would love to invite him to share a few words about his experience at the Congress.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Herbert from the AZM. You guys are doing a really incredible job. Tell you, I got to be honest. When I was a delegate 5 years ago, I came to Israel, I came to Binyamin Oman, and I had no clue what I was getting myself into. So don't be freaked out. It can be an interesting process to navigate. I must say it's actually quite humbling because you're meeting hundreds of people from really around the world, and it's actually pretty inspiring. So I met Jews from Sweden, I met Jews from South Africa, from South America, and it was probably one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. So while we convene actually over Zoom, and we're actually meeting each other right now, next year is really going to be something special. I'll tell you, I forgot who I tried to make the point before, but when you meet other people from other slates, and you can have just coffee or a drink with them, you break down those barriers. Actually, 5 years ago, I met actually one of the heads of the Arts and Movement. Actually, wonderful guys named Josh Weinberg, and today he's actually a very close friend. So while we see, even though we don't see actually eye to eye ideologically, or let's say even by slates, we became actually real genuine friends. So actually, turns out he ran the arts campaign, and actually I ran the campaign for Slave for the Orthodox Israel Coalition. So while we were competing to get to #1, we had that mutual understanding and respect for each other. So I just want to say, really just good luck to you guys, and it's really an exciting opportunity, exciting experience. And if there's any questions, you should feel free to chat me in the chat box. And and welcome aboard as a delegate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yehuda. Hopefully we're all inspired. I've heard somewhere before next year in Jerusalem, right? So hopefully we will all have that experience soon. Sorry. In any case, we're gonna go into some breakouts and get to meet and greet. And as Zach alluded to earlier, I'm gonna send out an email to everyone inviting you and offering an opportunity to join a really cool platform that we've worked with a few times. It's pretty new, but we did it with CYJP a couple weeks ago, and you get kind of a speed networking experience. And so throughout the Congress, when there's kind of some breaks and whatever, I know you want to eat and do work, or, I know there's a lot of challenges, but maybe you can find some time. And if you're interested, I think it will be a really great opportunity, because again, some of the beauty of the Congress is meeting with other people and breaking bread and getting to know them. And again, we were planning a really cool young adult party that we could all meet and greet from people around the world, and hopefully we'll get to do it. But for now, we'll at least get to know a few people, and make sure you unmute yourselves, have your videos on. And Jeff, do you want to give some maybe ideas of what people can talk a little bit about? And then we'll do a breakout for about 10 minutes or so. We'll come back. I'll let you know about some upcoming programs that we have. And then if we have time, we could do another one, or if not, we're happy to stay on, and we can always talk more, ask questions, have kind of an open forum. I will mention that we have a bunch of social media hashtags as well that we'll share with you. And again, if you have any questions, concerns, ideas, just be in touch with us. Jeff?
Yeah, so just to get the conversation going, we'll run a little icebreaker. So when we get to the breakout rooms, if you want to introduce yourself by giving your name, where you're from, which slate or organization that you are part of that you'll be representing at the Congress, how you came to be a delegate or alternate for the World Zionist Congress, and lastly, one word that comes to your mind when you hear the word Zionism.
And if you have any questions, I'm going to stay in the main room. So we're going to go ahead for about 10 minutes, and thank you. Enjoy. Okay, cool. So I hope you all found some meaning in that, got to know some other amazing young Zionists who, may have different views, may not, learn something about, why people are here in this room, how they got here. And there's, I think, a lot more. One of our themes at AZM is Zionism Forward. So I think that we'll continue with that realm. We could go into another breakout, or we could just unmute, have a conversation, anyone who wants to stay on. Either way, I'm happy with that. Again, there were about, I think, Jeff, correct me, or Herbert, if you're here, there are just over 100 young adult delegates from the United States.
Yeah, 102 delegates and alternates combined from the U.S.
And additionally, the Canadian Zionist Federation, or CZF, often joins us in a lot of programming, and has been invited to join us here tonight. So we have at least 1 or 2 delegates or alternates from different parts of the Zionist Federation world there. But before we wrap up or open the floor for any questions, comments, etc., I will just let you know about a few upcoming programs that we are running before the Congress. So again, the Congress is next week, and you can always go to that link that we put in our up on our page, where we tried to put a bunch of links that will be interesting to you. you think something's missing, let us know. We're happy to add it, or if you can't find what you're looking for. This coming Thursday, tomorrow, the 15th, I don't even know what day it is, not just because Corona, but also because just so much going on, is a program called Collecting the Dream with David Matlow, who is the largest collector of Herzl memorabilia. He's a fascinating fellow who will share why Herzl is still relevant. So tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So if anyone's interested, you can go to the ASEAN website, you can reach out to us, etc. Then this Sunday, we're doing a program in partnership with the Herzl Center, Har Herzl or Mount Herzl. Many of you have probably been there, where amazing leaders are buried, and there's a beautiful, they do a lot of beautiful celebrations for the soldiers and etc. But we've done a bunch of programs with them, giving you tours, and we're gonna once again do some programming with them. And then we have an awesome program Monday right before the Congress at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And perfect, there's the flyer. So Inside the World Zionist Congress happening this week. And one of the reasons we called it Inside, not just because you'll get some inside information and things that are going on, but also the Jewish Insider. There's an amazing woman, Melissa Weiss, who will be moderating the conversation. So we thought it was a cute kind of pun, the Insider. But yeah, I'm just, again, excited to have you here. Happy to see all your faces. Looking forward to seeing you all next week. And of course, next year in Israel. So I'm gonna stop recording. If anyone wants to stay on, if you wanna ask any questions, you're welcome to unmute yourselves. But I figured always better to end early than run late. So if you would like 15 minutes back of your life, of course, you're welcome and we won't be upset. But feel free to stay on, ask any questions. Again, we have an amazing resource in Andrew, who's been to Congress before and has really incredible positions. I don't know if you got a chance to understand anything about, you know, the roles he's playing and what he's doing. We have Herbert Bloch, the executive director of EZM, who has done a real deep dive and is super involved. And again, not in any political position or persuasion, but really just helping run and orchestrate the 152 delegates, as well as also, of course, alternates. And Jeff, who has really managed the logistics and day-to-day of everything and been in touch with probably each and every one of you if you are a delegate or an alternate in the US. So feel free to unmute yourselves, ask any questions, and we're just happy to have you and hope this was a nice opportunity. I'm just about at the bottom of my glass of wine, but I will say a last l'chaim and wishing you all health, wealth, happiness, and success. So l'chaim, stay healthy, stay safe, and feel free to stay on if you're interested in talking more.